All right, speaking of women leaders, I'm excited to introduce the next panel. In an omni-channel world, new technologies that enable commerce and payments are emerging constantly. As the future of the payments industry is shaped in real time at TRANSACT, 5 distinct voices in payments technology will join us on the stage to give us forward-thinking insights to the payment technology world. Where do they see the future of commerce going, and what are the challenges and opportunities that they see from their unique lens? Please help me welcome the moderator of our next panel, Carol Grunberg, President-elect of WNET and Head of Key Accounts at Ant Financial.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm really excited for this panel, and I'd like to welcome our panelists to please join me on the stage. Let's start with Kim Fitzsimmons. And as you'll see our panelists come up to join me, welcome Kim, hi. In this panel, you'll notice we have a wide range of leaders across our industry. We have a mobile and online payments platform. We have a payments processor. We have a financial institution, a high-tech bank and startup incubator, and we have a point-of-sale technology company. Please join me, everyone, on the stage. Hello, Julie. Hi, Ratika. And we have Jennifer. So before we get into our panel today, our panelists will give a brief introductions of themselves. If you don't mind kind of starting maybe with you, Kim.
Sure. Good morning. So I'm Kim Fitzsimmons. I work with JP Morgan Chase. I have the pleasure of leading the U.S. operations for our global corporate bank clients and investment bank clients.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Julie Pukas. I work for TD Bank. I have responsibility for the U.S. merchant acquiring business as well as the U.S. bank card issuing business. So I have the pleasure of serving our customers in the payment space end to end.
Hi, I'm Ratika Graywall. I work at Silicon Valley Bank. I run payment strategy and solutions across the world, and what that means is we work really closely with startups at all stages of their life cycle to help them bring their solutions to market when it comes to anything regarding moving money.
And good morning. I'm Jennifer Miles. I work for Ingenico and have responsibility for their North America business.
Great. And I'm Carol Grunberg. I work for Ant Financial, also known as Alipay. And so on this panel, what we hope to share with you today are perspectives on the future of commerce and opportunities that it presents for all of us. We'll touch upon emerging markets, emerging technologies, and how these technologies are changing and how we need to adapt to the changing landscape as it's shifting. So I'll start off a little bit in regards to a global landscape coming from the Chinese perspective that I see most frequently day in and day out, and then we'll move more locally. So one example that I see every day is in China, for example, consumers and merchants are definitely mobile first when it comes to payment transactions, retail in general. And so that's one shift that I've seen that's very dramatic from how we conduct transactions traditionally in the US. In Europe, a lot of new regulations are coming out with GDPR, PSD2, and it's affecting us across the world and especially in the United States. So I'll lead this off to you, Kim, perhaps to help address this first question. As you see some of these global shifts happening, what gets you excited, and also what are you keeping your eyes on, and how does this affect you day in and day out?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I think from the U.S. payments landscape, which many of us are very focused on, we think about us as being kind of the leader. So the Amazon Go, the one location where it's all cashless, cashierless. You have to think about it more globally because, to your point, other regions, like China, for example, they already launched 100 convenience stores. So they've got the startup company called Bingo Box, 100 different convenience stores while we're making all kind of news over here about Amazon's one location, China's got 100 locations going. And so I do think we have to look across all the regions, to your point, not just China, although where they were a fast follower and a replicator before, they are now leading. But Europe, a lot of regulation in Europe. Thinking about all the different alternative methods of payment, the alt-MOPs, and all the different regions, trying to keep up with all of that changing landscape, I think is very critical for us because those consumers are coming to the U.S. And as they get used to paying in a certain way, whether it's the Chinese consumer or the European consumers, they want to continue. So I think we'll continue to see an expansion of the different methods of payment here. Regulation, that's not exciting to us, but you have to keep an eye on it. You mentioned two of the big ones in Europe. And then I also think like digital remittance. So there's a lot of digital remittance things that are happening. The World Bank is really heavily involved in it. You see the partnership with Walmart and MoneyGram, where they're in 200 different countries, and they're able to do digital remittance at any Walmart location, kind of P2P. So it's just a lot of really cool, innovative stuff that's happening outside of the U.S. that I think it behooves all of us to just keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I add on? Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think that, and you know this better than all of us do, the Chinese market is really interesting in that there's so many people concentrated in main cities. And what that means is the tech savviness of those main cities is really, really high, and when they're really open to adopting new methods of payment. For example, Alipay took off so quickly in those markets. And here in the US, we have pockets where we've got concentrations of cities, but there's a lot in the middle where there's not that technical sophistication. So I think that also impacts a lot about how new programs are rolled out here, because you have to think about how all the sort of sub-markets within the US are going to adopt things and what things will stick and what things won't. And I think that explains a lot of the false starts and stops that we've had in the world of mobile payments, for example, and some of the other types of technology that have tried to launch here.
Yeah, I think only one point to add, and it's the reality that the friction that we used to have in the US that prevented quick innovation and implementation of some of these new schemes is now, I think, receding with all of the investments that are going on in the US environment as it relates to wireless technology, mobile technology, really the consumer being the driver of the interface. We're seeing a lot more investment and a lot more things happening that are taking those infrastructure barriers out of the way. So I think the message that I would make sure everybody in this audience really hears is that these things are going to be coming faster and faster. And as you're looking at your business, and the way that you need to manage your business differently to continue to grow, to continue to expand the things that you do, you've really got to start thinking about investing differently, because these things that are happening around the world are going to hit us much faster. Those early adopters are the ones that are going to be able to benefit, grow their market, and drive a lot more stickiness to their consumers because they're going to be seen as innovators.
So let's expand on that a little bit, Jennifer. So as things become, one of the big drivers is obviously things becoming a lot more digital, right? And so technology is becoming a lot more intertwined and permeating all facets of retail and payments. And so how is that affecting your strategies at Ingenico? How do you think about investments that you're making into the future?
I think the reality is the whole industry has had to look at this very differently over the last 2 to 3 years. We used to be very, very focused on the payment itself, the pieces and parts that enabled it. Now the reality is we've had to take a step back and look at it from 2 lenses. One, the tech stack that's really enabling all of these things to happen and intertwine, and that comes with seamless APIs and the ability to integrate with a variety of different systems and a variety of different environments. So the tech stack has to be much more frictionless than it used to be. So our innovation and our investment is really focused not on this one little piece, but on all of the different layers that make it work with other partners and places in the ecosystem. The other thing that we're focused on, and I think most of the folks on this panel are focused on, is changing how that tech stack really implements and impacts your go-to-market strategy, which used to be very linear and very focused, and now it's really about a convergence of ecosystem partners coming together to really deliver that combined solution in a very new way.
Yeah, and I just want to add something there, because as a bank, this is something obviously that we're challenged with every day, really for a couple of different reasons. One is, as we think about our go-to-market strategy, how we are designing our products, how we're interfacing with our clients, we're obviously now saying it's got to be all digital first. And that just seems obvious to everybody, but that is something that we're very focused on. But it is, from a bank perspective, a lot harder than you would think, because we are very protective of our brand, as I think everybody here in the room is. And we have to think about, how do we take a lot of different partners in order to deliver that digital experience? It just doesn't come from one place. And how do you make sure it's harmonized from a brand perspective? Where is it that you want people to maybe potentially see another partner involved in that transaction? There is just a lot more to thinking about how we're going to deliver that than I think it's just, let's just put everything out there digitally and somehow the customers will see it magically happen. It takes a lot of thinking, and it takes a lot of collaboration and partnership in order to do that, because often I know we are asking our partners to do things potentially they haven't thought of, because of where we want our brand to sit, how we want our brand to be positioned. And I think for a lot of people in the room, it's really important for folks to understand. Those are the things that, if you're thinking about working with a financial institution, those are the things that we're going to have to spend a lot of time thinking about.
I was going to say we do the same thing. So while the industry is moving and evolving at a very, very rapid rate, we probably have more regulatory scrutiny around just things that we have to do, not just to protect the brand, but then also the investment that we put in around security to ensure that this data is secured is probably even, tenfold. I mean, I think we spent $600 million last year just on cybersecurity and ensuring that the data is protected. And so when you layer that on top of how fast everybody needs to evolve, it gets really tricky.
So that's actually a great segue to think about. Emerging markets and startups are really good in being agile. They're able to test really quickly and get products out and then iterate. And oftentimes, sometimes it's, roadmaps are long, and especially in larger institutions, and it's really tough to to be able to pivot quickly, or to get products out to market, or adjust the feature set of whatever is out there, right? So I think, Ritika, you have a lot of experience in this with a lot of the startups that you see and you incubate. Yeah. How do you think the startup way, in essence, can be kind of better leveraged within larger organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of different parts to the answer, or the way to answer the question. So, one, we do work with companies at the very early stages, 2 people in a WeWork space, all the way through to giant, technology companies. And, I think the trend more and more these days is for the earlier stage companies to really, really focus on a particular vertical, for example. So I'm going to go after a medical office with, 2 to 10 doctors, and develop a solution to help address XYZ collections or payments or something like that. And then sort of taking that and doing it really, really well, and then kind of expanding from there. When you're a startup and you don't have an existing client base, you're kind of growing a base from scratch, you can make some mistakes, and you can get feedback. And that's part of the journey, is collecting feedback as you're going, and sort of refining, and then sort of taking it from there and building out. And so, if you're at a financial institution or having an existing business, it's a lot harder to do that, because you don't want to impact your current clients in a way that could be a sort of a negative experience. And so I think that's why you're seeing in sort of the more recent days, there's a lot more partnership going on between the fintech companies and sort of the incumbents, because they're bringing this idea of the agile development and incorporating feedback really, really early and often in order to bring their solutions to market. The second part of the story is like these earlier stage companies a lot of times don't have a lot of awareness around what we were talking about, sort of the regulatory and the infrastructure that they need to put in place to build solutions that are not only really great customer experiences, but thinking about scalability, sustainability, and regulatory compliance. And so that's a place where financial institutions can really offer a lot of benefit to these companies, is helping them think about that and bringing them into sort of the fold to help them scale and be compliant. So there's some startups that have grown bigger and are sort of, you see them sort of diversifying. I think sort of a non-controversial startup to talk about is somebody like SoFi, right? So SoFi started in a very specific space. They were focused on the Henry segment, the high earning Henry segment, and helping with the student loan financing. And now they've built themselves out to be more of a full financial services platform. And so like that's something that a lot of the different companies that we work with are looking at, like how do I enter really small and then kind of grow from there with an addressable market perspective, from an addressable market perspective.
I would just add one thing, which is, as we think about working with different types of partners, we spend a lot of time, because of some of the internal regulatory hurdles that we have to go through, is really defining it very carefully and narrowly, so that we can really be positioning as a lot of this activity as test and learn, because as soon as we start thinking about kind of broad rollouts, that puts it in a completely different box. And for us to really try, experiment, be agile with a lot of different partners, we're going to spend a lot of time in really defining things. What specific problem are we trying to solve? And not kind of create something that is much bigger. Sometimes I think that could be frustrating for the partners that we work with, because again, they see access to our customer base, they want to really make a big splash, but sometimes, it is something that we have to really be careful, think carefully about. But it's important for people to understand too, is we are adjusting internally how we think about these things, looking at different policies, making sure that we can react, making sure that we can be agile and working with partners. So there is a lot of work going on within financial institutions as you think about working with them to be more adaptive and to react more quickly.
Yeah, I can say just from our recent WePay acquisition, we probably spent as much, if not more time, thinking about how we keep them at arm's distance in the Bay Area so that we didn't kill them. Yeah. And so we literally had a huge strategy and a whole work effort around just making sure that they weren't engulfed by JP Morgan. And so, I think if you talk to any of the WePay guys, they're thrilled to be out in the Bay Area and doing their thing.
So with that then, okay, so let's talk a little bit about talent. So you need people that have domain expertise. You also need people that are going to be able to be very creative as well, right, and think a little bit differently. So as there are all these emerging things happening, there are a lot of new ideas happening constantly, right, globally. How do you go about acquiring the right talent? What's been effective in your organizations?
I'll start. I think it's really a lot about networking, right? It's this industry is so small, and it's always wonderful to come here, because you see people that you haven't seen for a year. People are carrying different business cards, but it's a very segmented industry, and I think the reality is, what I see people doing that are successful in kind of crossing the chasm and changing and transforming their companies is they are networking with partners. They're networking adjacent to the industry, not so far out that you're trying to bring somebody in who doesn't understand who we are and what we do, but someone who's really on the periphery, and networking to really try to bring in and identify people with different knowledge bases, different skill sets, different ways of looking at the industry, of looking at partnerships, and it really kind of has changed the landscape, I think, for some of the folks that have bubbled up in the last year to 18 months, really, that are now seen as innovators and leaders of their category. It starts with talent acquisition. It starts with finding someone that will think differently, bringing them into the organization at the right level, allowing them to partner and foster ideas, and creating an ecosystem and an environment and a company that actually is embracing of different ideas and new ways of doing things. I mean, to me, that's the key.
Yeah. Julie, do you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, I think everybody in this room, we spend more time thinking about talent than, at least I do. Probably I spend more time thinking about talent than anything else. And I think for us, being both the sales channel, we've got to think about what are the types of talent that we need in that organization. As a financial institution, obviously, our customers span really every industry. So it's, what we wrestle with is, a broad subject matter expert around servicing small businesses versus those people in the organization that we really want to be specialized to a certain industry. And that is both on the sales side as well as the product and marketing side, because our customers obviously expect us to know a lot about their industry so that we can service them. But certainly for a small business, we need to really be the trusted advisor across a lot of their financial needs. So it's really a unique balance, but I would say if I think back a few years ago, we were certainly looking for more diverse thinking, maybe a broader kind of background. We are looking for more specialists, but I will say, this idea of really being curious, understanding technology, that is just critical. And for, again, a financial institution that's working with a lot of different partners, understanding technology, how it all gets stitched together for the customer to deliver it in a seamless way, that's not as easy as a lot of people think. And those are the things that we really have to look for as we talk to customers. They can't be afraid of thinking more broadly across an organization and about stitching things together. It's not one specific thing that we end up delivering to our client. It really is a number of different things from a number of different partners.
Okay. So let's get a little bit even more local. As we touched upon a little bit, emerging technologies, emerging forms of payment like ourselves and others. Are your merchants, how are they asking for acquiring services, and what are they asking of you and your sales teams in regards to acquiring? Has that started to shift a little bit in regards to their needs?
I can take that one. So for us, they're definitely payments and acquiring is a piece of it.
Yeah.
But they're really looking for a much broader sense. They're looking to us as a trusted advisor to help them navigate the landscape. So even, the smallest mom and pop retailer on Main Street America wants to know how they can compete, how they can acquire new consumers, and how they can use all this data and analytics that everybody's talking about, and how can they grow their business. And it is about the experience. So it's the consumers that are driving it. And so for us, it's educating them on the consumer experience, helping to bring in technology all the way to Main Street America. Our partnership with you, with Alipay, AliExpress, how do we bring alternative MOPs like that down to small business? And so a partnership with Alibaba is going to be the way that we do that.
Yeah, and I was just, I think everyone's probably got the word like the Uber fatigue, meaning like people talk about the Uberization of payments, but it's really true. It's the expectations have changed around payments. Payments is not like a centerpiece anymore. It's the experience around it that really is what matters, and making the payments invisible and seamless and all of those things. Like people are, even sort of the mom and pop stores are hearing from their customers that they don't want to have to belabor the payments experience. I mean, even as a self-proclaimed payments nerd, every time I stand at a counter, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to swipe? Am I going to tap? Am I going to, no one wants to have to think about that anymore. You want to buy whatever you're buying and get out, right? And so I think that there's like that experience that you can have with an Uber or Lyft or whatever your favorite rideshare experience is really changing fundamentally how people think about consuming things.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, and again, we see our view in the ecosystem as really the technology enabler that really allows some of our partners to go to market and bundle and accomplish all of these things that the merchant consumers want to do differently. The questions that and the discussions that we have today with our key ISO relationships and ISV relationships are so different than the questions and the asks that we got even 2 years ago, right? It used to be just a very simple question about, hey, I just need to be able to do this type of payment or that type of payment. And that was it. Now the question, and these guys are the people that are servicing and putting together solutions for small America, USA down the street. They want to be able to compete and drive that loyalty with a consumer like a Walmart or a Target. They want to know, and they want a tech stack that lets them do that in very unique ways to compete with the big guys without the heavy investment, without the heavy burden from an IT perspective on their business. And they want to partner with somebody who knows how to think about it differently and can give them a competitive edge or a differentiation. So for us, I think the reality is the questions are different because people are really thinking about it much differently than they used to. Now, payment is it's a well, of course, not I want this. It's of course, but what else can you do with it that lets me do my business in a unique and creative way?
Yeah, so in your tech stack, right, you've got payments. It's just like a matter of fact. It's in there. It's all the other stuff that you're building around it to run their business, the HR and the inventory management and the seamless payments. How do you process the payment? It's all of that that's, I think, becoming much more prevalent.
So then how do you...
Every size business.
I would just say one thing, too, that we're saying is customers are coming more well-educated. I don't know if that's the Amazon, situation we have that we're all doing research, but they're researching, payment processing, merchant acquiring, whatever, Google words you want to put in there, but they're coming with a lot more information. They may not know specifically what they need or want, but they certainly have a better sense of what's out there. They may come somewhat more confused because, again, there is so much information out there, but certainly they're doing more homework before they get to us, before they walk into one of our branches than certainly they did before. So that has a lot of implication to us, one, making sure our salespeople understand all of the information that's available for them, making sure they're trained in a different way, and really even making sure down to the branch level, what is it that we're training our people in our branches about understanding, this arm of the business, and what are the things that they need to understand in a way that we don't make it too complicated for them. So I think this kind of pre-purchase journey that our customers are going on is very different than it was a couple of years ago, where they would show up and like, I'm going to take credit cards. It's a very different set of questions they ask.
Yeah, and the only conversation was around rate. Like, what's your rate? What do you pay? Our conversation now really is around authorization rates. Mm-hmm. Like, people want to know what are your auth rates versus somebody else, not just what are you going to charge me, right. But I'd much rather have a card get approved than declined. And so we have changed the whole conversation a lot.
And I think you've also touched upon the fact that more software is being introduced, right?
Yes.
And so that changes the entire conversation, right? And like you said, payments is just one component, but how do you go about educating your sales staff? Now the conversation's not about payments, right? It's about helping these merchants to manage their business. So are you management consultants? Are you helping them to help these merchants to be accountants, right? Like, so how do you go about training your salespeople as what to sell? What are they really selling? Are they selling a business consultancy service, or are they selling a payment service?
That's a great, that you've hit the key question, I think that 90% of the people in this room are dealing with. Yep. Because we've all seen that the questions are changing and the market is shifting, and I think everybody that we talk to is struggling with, how do I teach and educate my sales force to do this differently? I think the first thing, and we're in the middle of this transformation process too, right? I think the key is you've got to start with the basic 101. You've got to understand your customer better. And I think that's why we see this proliferation of ISVs in the market, because they're specialized. They understand the market environment, and it's a little bit easier for them to have a conversation of all the things their system can do, and oh, by the way, payment makes it easy. And so what we see is the mindset really shifting to the merchant's business, a verticalization strategy, understanding, being an expert on payments at that level with a small business. All they want to know is, to Kim's point, does it work?
Doesn't work.
Right.
And then it's, well, what else can you bring me that's going to help me run my business better, more effectively, more efficiently? And so the key is finding, again, back to talent acquisition, bringing the people in your organization that understand the conversation differently, and then positioning an organization in such a way that you've got champions that can learn and enable, and it happens over time. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah, and understanding what's unique for your business, right? So for us, a financial institution, we're not really training salespeople, we're training branch personnel. And we're training them to, here's payments, open a checking account, and issue them a,
Credit card.
ink card. So it's really more of a trusted advisor, around just your business, running your business holistically. You need money, you need funding, and you need payments. So we take it differently, but we take it from the financial institution view, and I think that's for everybody, the ISVs and VARs and everybody here. What is your unique value proposition? And you got to train them on that.
Yeah, because what we have found, and if you had asked me a few years ago, I would not have said this, but as we've been hiring new people into our kind of frontline sales organization, Kim is exactly right. One is really positioning that we're selling the whole bank. So, various services that we can offer. But even within the merchant world, what we have found is our most successful new sales representatives are those that are coming from our branch network, because they can have that conversation. What do you need? What is it that's going on in your business? They don't go to give me your statement, and then we can support them with the technology experts, with product people that can go out, and have those nuanced conversations. But, getting them to open up and have a conversation about what their business is, what their business needs, and where are they from a business life cycle. We have found, bringing people in that are already having those conversations with customers has been very successful. We can teach them merchant, we can teach them software, and we can, make sure they've got the right support network around them for the specialty conversations that we need to have with those customers.
Great. Well, great. Well, thank you so much. We're at time. It's been a great conversation. Thank you for doing this. Wish everyone luck to doing it individually together. Thank you. And also, as Teresa mentioned, we're doing this panel with you as part of WNet on bringing you the future of commerce. We also wanted to mention at 5 this afternoon, we'll be having a little networking event in the membership lounge. So please join us if you can. We'll be there to touch base with you. But thanks for attending the panel. And again, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Carol.